Chapter 11. George learns a lesson. Before we begin, what do you do when you commit a mistake unknowingly that causes a certain loss to someone? Do you honestly confess to it or try to blame others for it? When you are honest, you speak the truth and you present yourself in a genuine and sincere way, taking responsibility of your feelings and actions. George Washington was the founding father and the first president of the United States. Read this excerpt from George Washington's biography, in which he displays truthfulness and honesty in his childhood days. What a fine day it was for young George Washington. At just 6 years old, he had his very own hatchet. George was proud of his new hatchet. Its blade was shiny and sharp. George swung the hatchet through the air just to see the sun shine on it. His father stopped him. "A hatchet is not a toy, George," his father warned. "It can do much harm if you are not careful. Always be careful when you use it." George nodded at his father's words and understood the gravity of those words. George promised he would always be very careful with it. One day, George was feeling more excited than serious. His family's farm seemed to be full of things to cut. George started testing the hatchet's sharpness in the field. First, he tested his hatchet on a row of weeds at the edge of the cornfield. It sliced through their thin stems. After that, he took aim at the thicker stalks of the corn plants. Whack! 3 corn stalks fell with a rustle and a crunch. George stepped back, startled. He looked at his hatchet with a new respect. His father was right. He would have to be careful. Not far from the cornfield, George's father maintained his fruit orchard. His father was proud of the sweet apples, peaches, and pears that the trees produced for his family. He kept the trees' branches trimmed and took utmost care of them. Mr. Washington gave extra attention to his youngest tree. It was a delicate cherry tree. The cherry tree had been just a sapling when Mr. Washington planted it. Each year, he watched it grow stronger. Mr. Washington took very good care of his cherry tree. This year, there were blossoms on its branches. Perhaps, he thought, it might even give fruit. Mr. Washington thought of the fresh cherries they could pick. Then he thought of the cherry pies Mr. Washington could bake with the sweet cherries. He smiled to himself as he gave the cherry tree a pat. George ran up to Mr. Washington as he walked back to the house for supper. "This hatchet works well, father," he said. His father smiled. "Yes, I've seen you using it." "Thank you again, father, for such a wonderful gift," said George before running inside to get ready for dinner. During dinner, George's mother advised him to make good use of his hatchet. She asked George to help her chop wood for the fire. George readily agreed. The next morning, George hurried through his breakfast. As soon as he finished his last morsel, he told his mother, "I'm ready to chop wood now." His mother sent him out to the woodshed. Once done, he wanted to chop more wood, but there was none left. So he went outside. Just as he was looking for something to use his hatchet on, he saw the trunk of the young cherry tree. The tree trunk looked just right. It wasn't full grown as the apple and pear tree were. Without thinking twice, George chopped at the cherry tree. The blade dug into the tree trunk but pulled free easily. Why, it would take just a few strokes of his hatchet to cut the tree down. George chopped until the tree fell. George looked proudly at the fallen tree. It was then that he remembered how much his father liked the cherry tree. And he remembered how his father had told him to be careful with the hatchet. George hurried back to the woodshed and sat in a dark corner. Mr. Washington saw the fallen tree onto the house.
He saw that its trunk was cut through with many strokes.
He realized there would be no cherries, no cherry pies. After all his hard work and care, there would be no cherries. George's father sadly walked back to the house. George saw his father walk past the woodshed. Slowly, he followed his father into the house. He held his hatchet tightly. His father turned as he heard George came in the door. He looked at George. He looked at George's hatchet. George could see that his father was very angry. "George," he said, "do you know who cut down my cherry tree?" George took a deep breath. He tried not to think about being punished. Faith is like a stony uphill climb. A single stumble might send you sprawling, but belief and steadfastness will see you to the very top. So, George decided not to break his father's faith in him and told the truth. He said, "I cannot tell a lie, father. I cut down your cherry tree." George looked at his feet. He felt like crying. "I wasn't careful with the hatchet. I'm sorry, father." Then he held his breath and waited to hear what his punishment would be. George felt his father's hands on his shoulders. "Look at me, son," said Mr. Washington. George made himself look up at his father. To George's surprise, his father no longer seemed angry. In fact, Mr. Washington looked rather calm. "You have been honest, son," said Mr. Washington. "That means more to me than any cherry tree ever could."